When I got robbed, it was fairly low-key, but my companion and I were walking down the street, and it was probably 7 or 8 at night, but it was dark, and we saw a drunk man coming toward us, so we crossed to the other side of the street, and then he crossed to the other side of the street with us. We're like, darn it, what do we do? So he came up, and he had a newspaper in front of him, and he looked at me and was like, give me 10 lempiras, or I'm going to shoot you because I have a 9mm shotgun. And he was saying it in Spanish, but I think he said 9mm shotgun in English. But I don't remember. But I remember thinking, like, I don't know a lot about guns, but I'm pretty sure a 9mm shotgun's not a thing. But he's drunk, so he might still have a gun and not know which kind of gun he has, because he was holding up a newspaper. And the thing is, 10 lempiras is the currency they use there. 10 lempiras is like nothing. I could buy like 1 baleada with that. Like, you can't even buy a full meal with it. I don't know why he was robbing me for 10 lempiras. So I pulled out a 5 and gave it to him. In hindsight, that probably wasn't a good idea. But in my mind, I was like, he's drunk. He won't notice that I'm saving myself 5 lempiras. And he pulls it out and he's like, this is only 5. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get you your other 5. And my companion looks at him and she's like, hermano, like, don't you remember us? Like, we've met before. We're the missionaries. Like, remember, like, we're nice people. You shouldn't rob us. And he's like, no, I want my 10 lempiras. And my companion's like, it's rude to rob people, you know. And he's just like, I didn't rob anyone. And I was like, you robbed me just now. And he was like, well, fine. Do you want your 10 lempiras back? And I was like, yes, I do. And then he looked at me and was like, well, do you want to get shot between the eyes? But at this point, in all of his talking, he had moved his hands. And it turned out it was just his hand, like this, behind the newspaper. He didn't even have a gun. But he, like, held it right up by my face, like his finger right here. Like, do you want to get shot between the eyes? And I just looked at my companion and was like, hermano, let's go. To keep the 10 lempiras, we're out. And that was it. We got to the airport, and it was so hot, even in December. It was so hot. We got on a bus, this, like, little... they call them rapititos. It's like a really large van, like a 20-person van, but they're buses. And we got on one and we stopped at a grocery store to just buy some quick snacks to eat on the bus to our area, because it was going to be an 8-hour bus ride to get to my first area. And I remember we were in this little bus and we pulled up to the Mirna bus station. And I vividly remember it was raining, and you pull up to the bus station and all of a sudden people start crowding around the bus, and they're like banging on the windows and they're shouting, and I had no idea what was going on, and I was so terrified. I was like, I'm in a third world country and people are yelling and I have no idea what's going on right now. And then after a while you just get used to it, because they're actually selling things. Like, you just open the window and you give them the cash and they'll give you a bottle of water or some fruit or like some desserts, whatever it is they're selling. And so that took some getting used to. But I got off the bus and I just remember standing there in the rain, and it was muddy, like it wasn't paved. And I remember worrying about my bags getting muddy, just waiting for the bus to come. But once you got used to it, it was all good. The food of Honduras is pretty interesting. Like, people assume it'll be like Mexican food, and it's not. I remember my first area, my first cocinera, it was just plain white rice, boiled red, I think they're red kidney beans, and then some sort of meat. And when she cooked, the meat was seasoned the same way every single day. So it's basically the same lunch every day. But the food that's most, how do I say this in English? The first, like, typical food is the baleada. And the baleada is a flour tortilla that they make from scratch. And then you put refried beans and some cheese on there. And then you fold it in half and you eat it. And they eat that every single day for breakfast and dinner, but they never eat it for lunch. But they're so delicious. I ate 464 of them on my mission. And they're my favorite Honduran food. That and tajadas. They take plátano, how do you say that in English? Plantains. And they slice them, and then they deep fry them, and you put sour cream on them, and it's so good. But then there's another type of tajada that's super common, and they make it from guineo. And in Honduras, guineo means an unripened banana, a green, hard banana. And they eat them all the time because they're super cheap. So if they make them into tajadas, they'll do the same thing where they slice it and deep fry it, and then they put like shredded cabbage and meat and like a sauce on it, and it's delicious. And other times they'll take the guineo and they just cut it in half and then they boil it and then they use it as a side dish for your lunch. It's like dry and it's flavorless, but you eat it like every day. And there's a really famous soda, it's banana flavored soda. And at first you kind of hate it, and then eventually it grows on you and you think it's delicious. So if you've ever heard of a place where I can buy banana soda, let me know, because I've never found a place here. I mean, they speak Spanish just like most other Latin countries. They do have a weird accent. They drop their S's and they put in a J. You call it a jota. Because in Spanish, J makes an H sound, like a H. The word entonces, that was like entonces. Like, entonces. Like at first, I felt frustrated sometimes because like I know what the word entonces means, but I just didn't understand that that was the word they were saying to me because of the accent. And not like some people have a stronger accent than others, and they use vos. Like in Spanish, you can conjugate you informally and formally, and then they conjugate the verb differently when they use vos. So it's similar, and like I remember realizing, like I hear this word all the time, and I know what it means, but I have no idea where that conjugation comes from. So once you learn to listen for that and you listen for the jota, it becomes a lot easier to understand them. There are two other tribal dialects. There's Mosquito and Garifuna. In my experience, people in Honduras, the culture of their emotions is a larger spectrum than Americans. Like, I don't know how to explain it. A Honduran will learn to love you more easily. They're so friendly. Like, we met this woman on the street once, and we just walked up to her and we were like, "Hola, hermana, like, ¿cómo está?" And she ran up and was like, "Oh, hermanas," and like gave us these big giant bear hugs. Like, "How are you doing? Come in, sit down, let me get you some water." And I looked at my companion and I was like, "Do we know this woman?" And she was like, "No, I've never seen her before in my life." Like, they're so friendly and they're so wonderful, but the spectrum's bigger, so it's bigger on the other end too. So they also get offended more easily. Like, it's kind of sensitive. Like, if you don't finish all of the food a woman gives you, like, she might not ever invite you to eat in their home again. So you do kind of have to be careful, but it's also really wonderful because they're just the most friendly, kind, giving people. Like, one time this guy gave us a free taxi ride. We just looked at him and we're like, "We really need to go to this place really quickly, but we don't have any money." And he was just like, "Okay, happen, I'll give you a ride," and just gave us this free taxi ride. Like, it was so nice. And they're pretty casual there, like, as far as time and things go. They're sitting around relaxing all the time. They have hammocks everywhere. They're late for everything. Like, we just knew if we're having a ward activity at 6, we'll tell everyone to be there at 5:30 and hope we can get started by 6:15. So you have to adjust for that sometimes, but it happens. They're very casual with their time. They don't normally commit to things or plan things. So we'll have an appointment, like we'll teach someone a lesson and then we'll pull out our planners and be like, "Can we come back Thursday at 3? Would that be cool?" And they're like, "Hermanas, I have no idea what I'm doing Thursday at 3. I might be here. I might be out running errands. I might be at my sister's house. Like, who knows what I'll be doing Thursday at 3. But sometimes then it's really nice, because if you need like a backup plan or something falls through, like you can just show up at their house and they're there and they're willing to talk to you because they don't mind if you show up unannounced. But they're also just they're very kind. Obviously, I miss the people. We message on Facebook sometimes and I miss just being able to talk to them and see them, and I miss some of the food, like the baleadas and the tajadas, but the rice and boiled beans and the guineo I don't miss. But I miss culture most. Like in Honduras, there's like vendors on the street everywhere. Like you can buy a watch or fruit or clothing or a bootlegged movie or anything, just like there on the street. Like you're walking down the side of the road and some guy's just like, "Hey, do you want a coconut?" And you're like, "Sure." And he pulls out his machete and he puts a straw in it, and we're just like walking down the street drinking coconuts. And I wish we had that here. I think it'd be really cool.